And just don't be bullshit. Back to the 3 core values. I think one of mine is don't be bullshit.
Don't be bullshit is one of your
Don't
core
be
values?
bullshit.
Yeah, that's a good core value.
Yeah. I could find a more noble way of putting it, but don't be
No,
bullshit.
I think that's a great way to put it.
That's my motto. Just don't be bullshit. Bullshit is defined as anything that I define as bullshit.
Okay.
What I like about it is that it's like nice and circular, so there's no loose ends. Welcome to Making Yourself Clear. I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
And today we're going to talk about how to be a great conversationalist, even if you are a total introvert and don't feel like you have anything to say.
Yeah. How can you carry any conversation? What is the one technique that will work? And this will work universally for pretty much anybody.
Agreed. So we'll give the game away with a question. What was the last time a question really stopped you in your tracks? A question that really made you pause and think and brought something out of you, like a thoughtful answer, or maybe it stimulated a deeper emotion, or it led to an insight.
I was working with a client on a coaching call, and he actually asked me a brilliant question and said, what are your 3 core values? And I had to sort of stop and assess, because it's something that I have considered and it's something I thought about, but it's not something anybody has ever actually asked me as part of a conversation. So it was a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah. How about yourself?
I've been asked, what's the question you don't want me to ask you?
Oh, that's a good one.
Very provocative.
Yeah.
It taps right into like, what's the thing you're afraid I'm going to ask right now?
Yeah.
It's brilliant because it's almost certainly a trailhead to somewhere interesting and probably useful.
Yeah.
Thing I'm avoiding, which is probably what I need to look more closely at. So we're talking about the power of questions as the secret to unlocking great conversations.
Yeah. Even if you're having a conversation that's just kind of boring and maybe you don't want to be part of it anymore. I mean, in that case, just walk away. But if you're stuck there for one reason or another, start asking some questions, get curious, and you might like where the conversation winds up.
Yeah. Some people just have the gift of the gab and are natural extroverts and are gregarious and can be the life of the party in any setting, but others are more introverted and perhaps shy.
Yeah.
And I think most of us fall somewhere in between, and conversations can default to the rote sort of, hey, how's it going? And then you talk about sports or the weather or superficial stuff that no one cares about.
Yeah.
We did an episode on going deeper in conversations.
We did.
That touches on similar thematic material here. But if you want a conversation to be more interesting, or if you want to be experienced by someone as a good conversationalist, one of the great ways to do that is just ask them good questions and give them space to answer.
Think about it this way, right? Most people's favorite topic is themselves.
Yep.
It's the thing that they know the most about.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's got a vested interest because they're talking about what they like, whatever that is. And then you can kind of steer that in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll put out there is if you've ever been in a conversation where someone doesn't ask any questions, it can feel really tedious. Where someone's not asking you about yourself, where someone's not asking you what you're interested in, where you're kind of being talked at rather than spoken to, rather than being engaged.
Very one way, doesn't feel reciprocal. What's off-putting about that is it demonstrates a sort of self-absorption almost. It's like they only care about themselves or their lives or the things that they're interested in, and without any curiosity about the things that you care about.
Yeah.
So flipping that on its head, if someone is genuinely curious and listening to you and is asking follow-up questions and is just curious about whatever it is that you're interested in, it gives you an opportunity to share things that have some significance to you. And it feels good to have an audience, especially somebody who's really leaning in and asking not just obvious questions, but more thoughtful questions.
Yeah.
And we talked about the 5 levels of listening. You know, as you listen more deeply, you can ask deeper and deeper questions, and you can actually really shape the depth of the relationship itself through listening. But one of the ways we reflect that we're listening is in the quality of the questions we ask.
Absolutely. As we're asking better questions and as we're building that trust, the conversation gets deeper, the relationship eventually deepens as well. So we're going to talk about the role of questions and why they might matter more than maybe you think that they do.
What has a question really take a conversation in a deeper or more interesting or more intimate direction, and what might have it fall flat or even engender the opposite response, like a defensiveness or a resistance?
And what are some examples of some styles of questions that you can ask if you're feeling stuck? We'll give you a little bit of a toolkit that you can use to move conversations in interesting directions. Even if you're not the most outgoing person in the world,
you can make any conversation interesting, and you don't have to go into it having any idea what it is you want to say. You don't have to say much at all. You can just bring your ears and your curiosity and learn to ask good questions. And then invariably what happens when you get into a conversation is somebody will share something and that'll remind you of something else, and then the conversation can flow.
Yeah, it ebbs and flows.
Lots of different ways.
Yeah, there'll be trailheads that you might want to go down, things that you're like, I'm not interested in that. But you'll find what piques your interest about what the person is saying, and then you can just keep exploring. You can just keep going. If you're asking good questions, it won't be one of those conversations where it's just like, oh, this is such a slog. I don't want to talk to this person.
Right.
Again, if you find yourself in that kind of a situation, there's nothing stopping you from just walking away and shutting it down.
Just thought of something as you were talking. We don't want to over promise on this necessarily. And why I thought of that is my girlfriend is a psychotherapist, and I've had this experience in coaching as well, but we'll talk sometimes, we'll talk shop.
Sure.
Obviously without naming names or details, but there's this experience that can happen where as a coach or therapist, you've got a client who shows up and is really shut down or closed off, and you'll ask some questions and get these really just 1 or 2 word dead end kind of answers.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden a 45 or 50 minute call can start to feel like a week. It's like you're trying to pull the person into the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's its own thing. That's just a sign more that they're struggling to open up. But in a social setting, hopefully you don't find yourself in too many of those situations. And if you do, you can find an exit. It's a little different when you're literally being paid to listen.
I mean, there is a bit of a difference there, but there are some tools and techniques around that too. I mean, like if someone's trying to avoid having a conversation, that in itself might beg the question, like,
I sense that you're uncomfortable here.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that.
Or the one that you mentioned earlier, right?
What are you afraid that I'm going to ask you?
What are you afraid that I'm going to ask you? What are you avoiding right now?
Right. Or what are you afraid might happen if you opened up a little, or even just what's present for you right now? I sense a certain drop in your energy. What's present?
So the questions we ask signal what we care about in the conversation and with the person that we're speaking with, and how deep we're willing to go with that person as well. So it'll also tell them pretty quickly how much someone's actually paying attention and how interested they actually are in being there.
For sure. If you're sharing an experience and somebody asks you a question that gets you more in touch with the nuances of that experience, that just feels good. It's like, oh, you really get this. Like you're really listening.
Yeah.
That's a thoughtful question. It's not just the obvious thing.
Right.
Now, questions like anything else, there's always an underlying intention driving it, right? So some questions are supportive and open and build psychological safety by inviting more openness and transparency.
Yeah.
The other extreme end of the spectrum, you've got the lawyer cross-examining a witness on the stand.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a leading question, and they're just setting you up for the gotcha moment.
Right.
And if someone's doing that to you, you're going to feel less safe because you can just sense that there's an agenda there, and this feels like a trap. This feels like you're setting me up for something that I'm not going to like.
Yeah. What's with all the questions, pal?
That'll shut me down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So having flashbacks to being a teenager, and it's like, where were you last night? And I'm wondering, do they already know? And they're now trying to see if I'm honest, or do they not know? Like I don't know what's going on, but I don't like it. I'm scared.
Yeah, for sure. There can be that element to it as well.
They're clearly not just a request for specific information. Like there's a whole lot that goes on under the hood with any conversation, but behind questions in particular.
Yeah. The tone, the timing, the intention is just as important as the words that you're choosing. And learning to ask better questions it's not about being clever. It's not about being the smartest person in the room. It's not about being the most interesting person in the room. It's just about connection and care for a person. A good question can transform a conversation in a really interesting way. So let's dive into what makes a good question and what doesn't make a good question. Great question does more than just gather facts about a person. It's going to expand the way that you're thinking. It's going to deepen that connection that you have. What makes a good question? What are some qualities that you would say make a good question?
Well, in coaching, we talk about asking open-ended questions rather than just yes or no questions, or a question that has like a short, finite list of possible answers.
Right.
And then you get that answer and there's nowhere to go from there. Would you like chocolate or vanilla? Chocolate. Great. That's the end of the conversation.
That's the end of the conversation. Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to something a little more expansive, like share a memory when you had ice cream and it was like a really special thing or whatever. And then that is wide open. I have no idea where the answer is going to go.
Right.
It can go in lots of different directions.
Yeah. Good questions are clear. They're simple. They're easy to understand and they're easy to respond to. Not in the yes or no sense, but just, I know what it is you're asking me, right?
Right.
You want to be sensitive with tone and context, timing, especially if someone new that you don't know. You want to be careful maybe with some of your questions. You never know what people are dealing with. So that's something to consider.
Right. And there's a certain openness, right? Where you're pointing in a particular direction, but it's kind of a vast open direction. Like, what's most important to you in this situation? Or what would progress look like here? As opposed to like a more leading question, which would be, are you sure you want to do that?
Right.
Which is not really a question. It's me signaling that I have doubts about your choice.
Yeah.
Or wouldn't it be better if, which is what I'd call a quagestion. It's like a suggestion smuggled in, pretending to be a question.
Okay.
So
Quagestion.
a quagestion, right? It's like it grammatically is a question, but clearly the meaning is,
Yeah.
I'm giving you advice, but with a question mark at the end.
Smuggled in as a
Advice
question.
smuggled in as a question, which is a form of bullshit. And just don't be bullshit. Back to the 3 core values. I think one of mine is don't be bullshit.
Don't be bullshit's one of your
Don't
core
be
values?
bullshit.
Yeah, that's a good core value.
Yeah. I could find a more noble way of putting it, but don't be
No,
bullshit.
I think that's a great way to put it.
That's my motto. Just don't be bullshit. Bullshit is defined as anything that I define as bullshit.
Okay.
What I like about it is that it's like nice and circular, so there's no loose ends.
So we talked about leading questions. There are also loaded questions.
Lots of loaded questions.
Yeah. Why do you think you screwed that up?
Right. Or there's the famous one of back to the lawyer cross-examining somebody, and the question was, so sir, when exactly was it that you stopped hitting your wife? Well,
right.
I didn't. Oh, so you're still hitting her? Well, no, I never hit her. But
right. Yeah.
Just answer the question. Just the date. Right. So you can kind of back someone into a corner.
Yeah.
With a loaded question it's not an open question at all. It's a question with an agenda.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's a key distinction. If your question has an agenda behind it, you've probably had the experience of somebody asking you a question, but you can tell there's a question behind the question where it's like, just ask me the thing you just really want to know.
I really hate that when someone is dancing around a question.
Yeah. There's something they really want to ask, but that's not what they're asking. They're asking something slightly different. But based on what I say next, they're going to extrapolate an answer to the question that's lurking in the background.
Right.
I don't know what you're going to do with what I'm about to tell you if I were to just answer the first question, but I don't like it and I don't trust it.
Additional layers of bullshit.
Don't be bullshit.
Don't be
back
bullshit.
to that. So far, we're talking about this in a social context.
Yeah.
But in my prior career in the tech startup kind of world, I was a product guy, among other things, but people would often come to me with questions. Someone on the sales team, hey, can the system do this? And they'd ask a really specific technical feature related question. And I almost never answered the first question they asked me because I knew that they were relaying this from a customer, but it's relayed through a sales guy who's not necessarily the most technical.
Right.
So I could just answer the question as asked, but then I don't know what he's going to do with that
information
weapon I just handed him. So I would follow it with a question that'd say, well, let's zoom out a bit. Tell me what your customer's trying to accomplish. Give me the backstory. And then 9 times out of 10, when they gave me that, I realized that they had asked me the wrong question.
Right.
Because what they really wanted was something slightly different, but they asked the question that kind of had what they thought the solution was pre-baked into it. So that was one of the things I learned was don't answer the question just automatically. Really understand what they're after. Extract from them a better quality question.
Right. I was doing an interview for a job once and the hiring manager sent me just like a little data packet about like, here's the company and here are the things you need to know. And this is the person who's going to interview you. This is the time. And then at the end, it said, don't forget to ask at the end of your interview, is there any reason right now that you feel like I might not be a good candidate for this job? Which I thought was an excellent question. And I asked it. And then the person who was doing the interview said, why is everybody asking us that?
So this is now out there in the ether.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great question, too.
I thought it was, too. And I've used it since in other interviews, and people have been like, wow, what an excellent question. Right. So it has worked and it's landed, but in that particular interview.
This particular interviewer had heard the same pickup line too many times that night.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Why is everyone asking me that? And I told them, I was like, well, the hiring manager literally told me to ask that question. They're like, we got to tell them to take that out of the email.
Walk that back. I'm tired of it. I was in a job interview once, and this was my 4th year of undergrad, and I was doing lots of interviews through the Career Center.
Yeah.
Like dozens of interviews. And at some point, I got burnt out on the process and was really sick of it. And so there was this one, and it wasn't going particularly well, and I wasn't super excited about the job anyway. And then the interviewer hits me with, to me, it was like a standard kind of eye-rolly interview question. And she said, "What are 3 adjectives that describe you best?"
Right.
And I looked at her deadpan and said, "Tall, dark, and handsome." And for those of you that know me, I'm not tall. So she looked at me, she didn't laugh. And I was like, okay, short, dark, and handsome? Still crickets. I was like, dark, you got to give me dark. So I didn't get that job.
I had one of those too. They asked me, if you were an animal, what animal would you be? And it was just like, come on.
Come on.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
It's dumb. I would find that pretty irritating.
That would hit your bullshit meter? That would be bullshit?
That as per my definition.
Yeah.
My airtight definition, that'd be bullshit.
We got to do an episode on don't be bullshit.
Don't be bullshit. I could talk about it for hours.
You could bullshit on it.
Touche.
So we want to make sure that we're asking good questions, that we're not asking questions that are just, not moving anything anywhere, because people can tell, right? Too complex can also be an issue if we're asking too many questions in one question. So
one question at a time.
Yeah.
That's something they also, like in coach training school, they talk about, don't stack your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Distill it down to one thing at a time rather than asking this and this and this in one sentence, because it's overwhelming and the person doesn't know where to go.
Great questions come from just being present in the moment, in the conversation. And if you're actually listening, then interesting questions will come in and the conversation will flow naturally.
That's a good point. If you're really curious, just follow your own interest and curiosity. And if you just bring curiosity to someone else and get them sharing something that they're passionate about, even if you're not, we can take energy from other people's enthusiasm.
Absolutely. There have been lots of conversations I've had with people just socially at gatherings and that sort of thing where I've asked, what are you passionate about? And then you see somebody light up. And that just makes an interesting conversation.
Totally.
Like, I might not be interested in the specific thing that you're talking about, but the fact that you're so passionate about it. Like, I had a conversation one time with a fella about watches. I'm not into watches, but he was really into watches. And he was talking about like, oh yeah, well, this face, it's the company. It was actually riveting.
Sure.
To have a man sit down and show me his watch. And it was like a 30, 45-minute conversation.
About watches.
About watches. And he was German, so it was all broken English, but he still kept my attention.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. When someone's really interested in something, you can become interested in the fact that they're interested.
Yeah.
What about this is so attractive to you?
Yeah.
Ask questions about their interest, even if the thing itself is not riveting to you. My girlfriend's mom is really into quilting.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean like really into quilting.
Okay.
And turns out there's a whole community of quilters, and she's part of this online guild, and they make hundreds of quilts every year that they donate to women's shelters. And it's, as you'd expect, mostly women, but there are some men involved, and like there's the backstory of like, who are these guys that are into quilting and how did they come into it? And and then all the equipment and fancy sewing machines and the attention to detail and the patience it takes to cut all these tiny little shapes and then sewing patterns. And like, if someone's passionate about it, there's something about it that's interesting.
Sure.
And you just lean into it and see what it is about this that lights them up.
Yeah. If you can get someone to just be passionate about the conversation that you're having by just asking a question, it opens up just like a whole world, and you get to know someone better. You get to deepen that connection. Yeah, that's really where those great bonds are formed.
Totally.
Yeah.
So a few other practical tips. What we're driving at here is that the questions are just a way of expressing interest and curiosity.
Yep.
And that's what creates the bond, is you're just taking interest in another person and becoming curious about their experience. You can't help but learn something.
When I've been in conversation with someone and they've been asking me about things that I'm passionate about and interested in, I don't remember the details so much as just the feeling of, wow, what a great conversation. Like, what an interesting person, what a nice person, what a cool person, whatever. And it has nothing to do with the specific questions they asked. It's just the feeling of like, well, I really got to open up and be myself with that person.
There's a famous quote from someone, I forget who, but the quote is something like, people will forget what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And this is in that ballpark.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
it's
that's
the
good.
feeling of it. And if you don't know what to ask that's like in the details of someone else's area of expertise, because you probably don't know much about it, or even if the details are kind of boring you, because that happens too. Someone might be sharing about something that they're interested in, but they're talking at the level of detail, and now you're not interested.
Right.
one way to redirect is to ask a question about the experience itself. So what about that is so compelling or interesting to you? Or how did that make you feel?
Right. Yeah.
And now you're taking it out of the details and into something that's more universal and human that we can all relate to.
Yeah.
Share about the feeling, or that must have been scary or frustrating or exciting, or when did you first become curious about this?
Right.
Tap into the feeling or the experiential dimension to it, because at the end of the day, that's what drives us towards or away from everything.
Yeah.
It's all in pursuit of one experience or avoidance of another. And those are things we can all relate to, even though we access them through different pursuits.
So let's look at unpacking how to ask better questions. Like, what are some practical tips that we can use to just create a better question? Simple ways to upgrade questions. Instead of asking why, asking what or how, right? Like you said, how did that make you feel? So that's a good one.
Why has kind of a baked in, like, justify yourself, defend yourself. Like when someone asks why, not every time, but a lot of the time it can trigger a mind trouble.
Right.
This is a thing I can either get right or wrong, or it can trigger a certain defensiveness.
Why do you like watches so much? Oh, well, fuck you. First of all.
Exactly. Who the hell are you? Instead of saying why'd you do that? Or why'd you do it that way?
Right.
It's, what was your thinking? Walk me through your thought process here. It's just gentler and more respectful and safer. It's like, walk me through your thought process, which is a thing that I can have some respect for, as opposed to, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Which is sort of like, you dumbass. So I, last summer, did some work in the backyard, and one of the things was building a shed, or commissioning the construction of a shed.
Right.
And I had ordered this shed from a guy months earlier, and we had booked the date on the calendar, and it was all set up. And one of the selling features was the shed is built by, he called them ex-Amish.
Okay.
So like people who grew up in the Amish community, but were obviously no longer Amish because they could drive a truck into the city and build a shed for a city slicker like me.
Right.
Long story short, guy shows up the morning of the shed build, and he's driven from Owen Sound, which is like 3-4 hours from here, depending on traffic.
Yeah.
All the materials, comes into Toronto for the one purpose of building the shed, struggles to find parking for 20 minutes. Tried calling me. I was on another call, so I had to wait till that wrapped up. But it was like max 20 minutes. I call him back. I get him on the phone. He's already on the highway on the way home. He's gone. And he was not coming back.
Right.
He was upset that he couldn't find parking, and then I didn't answer his call. And this is Toronto. It's a big city.
Yeah.
20 minutes to find parking for a 22-foot truck downtown is not unheard of. And like we could have sorted this out. But no, he turned around and drove home. So he spent 8 hours on the road driving to not build a shed. So when it became clear to me that he wasn't coming back, I called the guy who had sold me this shed, and I got someone from his office on the phone, and she was like, let me call the guy and ask him why he left. And I said, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Because if you ask him why he did a thing, he's going to give you a justification for why he did it.
He's got a perfectly good reason.
And that's exactly it. If you ask why, you'll get reasons.
Yes.
So unless what you want is reasons, don't ask why.
Yeah.
I corrected her and said, I really don't want you to ask that question, because he's going to give you reasons, and then you're going to relay them back to me, and I'm going to be more upset.
Right.
And that's not an outcome I'm interested in. A better question would be, how and when can I have a shed? I don't want reasons. What I want is a shed.
Right.
So let's have a question that gets me closer to that outcome, as opposed to closer to being really upset that this guy left. So that's a long-winded anecdote, the point of which I think is, consider what you are inviting with the question you ask. And is that the thing you want?
Yeah. When you ask why, everyone is justified in what they're doing. They're
100%.
all going to give you what seem to them like perfectly good reasons. Now, they might be insane to you, but
everybody's the good guy all the time in their own story.
Yeah.
And if you already disagree and you ask them why, you're going to get their version of it that paints them as the hero, you as the villain, and it's likely going to piss you off even more.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip there for navigating conflict, right? Because sometimes in the heat of an actual conflict,
why did you do that?
A lot of questions are going to come up, right? So asking the right ones can help us get to resolution, and asking the wrong ones are going to, because if she had called him and asked him why, that would have further pissed him off too. Like, what are you calling me for?
Why'd you leave?
Yeah, why'd you leave? Like, why do you think I left? I can only imagine if it were me in that situation and I felt like I had done something perfectly reasonable and tried to call. Well, I tried to call. The guy didn't pick up.
Yeah, you're going to get an angry diatribe
Yeah.
from a guy who's clearly pissed because he just drove 3.5 hours and is now driving 3.5 more to go home. And he, in his worldview, that was 100% a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
You ask why, and he'll tell you about it.
Yeah.
I did not want her to ask that question because I had no interest in the answer.
Yeah. So not asking why, but asking other questions instead. How can we make this right?
How can we get closer to what we want here?
Yeah, exactly.
In an argument, instead of why'd you do that?
Yeah.
Hey, where to from here? How do we make this better?
Yeah. But even if it's not in an argument sense, what about that watch is interesting to you? Instead of why do you like watches so much?
Right.
Reduces defensiveness, invites actual reflection and an actual conversation. So that's the first thing. Another tool that we can use would be just get genuinely curious. And Chris, you said this earlier, right? If we're genuinely curious about something, and that's not tough to do, just find the thing that you're curious about what they said.
And it can be as simple as, say more about that. Tell me more about that.
Yeah.
It's just an invitation for someone to speak a bit more. That's it. What else did we say? We talked about keeping it like one question at a time.
Yeah.
Don't stack them all together because that can be kind of overwhelming. You can just ask, hey, what's behind that for you? Or what's underneath that? Or what does that feel like?
Yeah.
What was that like?
That's a good one.
What was that like for you?
What was that like for you? The other thing that you want to do is you don't want to, like you said, you don't want to ask too many questions at once. Leave some space, right? We're going to do an episode in the future about the power of pauses and the power of silence. If you just leave space for people, they get to think, they get to actually reflect on the question that you asked, and then you'll get a thoughtful answer.
Yeah, if you want a thoughtful answer, give people space to think. Stands to reason.
Yeah.
And we talked about this a little bit too, but ask questions that let the other person take the conversation in the direction that they want it to, as opposed to a question that's designed to steer it in the direction you want it to go. Because then, like in the one case, you're following someone, and the other, you're cornering them.
Yeah.
And they'll feel that, and they won't like it.
I can think of instances where I have been in conversations where it felt like someone was trying to steer me in a particular direction, and
it's manipulative, and you can tell. It feels manipulative.
Yeah. Last thing here, the question behind the question. What is it that you're really asking? There's subtext, there's motivation in everything that we're doing, right? So before you ask, what is it that you actually want to know? Are you asking because you're trying to control the situation and you're trying to corner someone, like Chris just said? Or are you asking because you're genuinely curious? And genuine curiosity can just be, I just want to get to know somebody better. So I'm going to ask them about things that they get excited about. What lights you up? I saw this great little webcomic one time, and it was two people having a conversation, and one says, what do you do? And the other one says, oh, well, and then they go on to describe their job. And then the person stops and says, no, I'm not interested in what your job is. I want to know what you do. What are your hobbies? What are your pastimes? What are you passionate about? What do you do? Your job is not what you do. Your job is what affords you the ability to do what it is you like to do.
Yeah. Reminds me of one of my favorite things about Burning Man, which some of our listeners will be familiar with, others maybe not, but it's this annual week-long city that gets built in the desert in northern Nevada every year. And it's like 80,000 people come together and live communally in this desert, and they build camps, and there's all kinds of art installations and parties and workshops and all kinds of things. But the culture is what I really love. And you'll almost never have that conversation where it's, so what do you do? Oh, I'm a lawyer. What do you do? Well, I'm a doctor. And then
it's so surface level.
It's very surface level. And just beneath the surface is this idea of where do you stand on the societal status hierarchy?
Right.
And then but it's very normal. We do this almost instinctively. What do you do? Tell me about that. Well, I'm the senior VP of blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. That's not ever where the conversations go. You drop all of that, and it's more like, what are you most passionate about? Or what are you most afraid of?
Right.
Or what do you really want to experience this week? These are such better questions.
I like to ask people, tell me about the last adventure you went on. And then people kind of go like, oh, I haven't been on an adventure. I'll say, no, listen, adventure is a very loose term here. It could mean a lot of things. Maybe you read a really good book and that took you on an adventure, right? Maybe you watched a movie that really took you somewhere.
Maybe you had a really interesting experience navigating Costco on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
That could be an adventure.
That is an adventure. That is a trip. Costco on a Sunday afternoon. Whew.
Yeah. I had an adventure this morning. I dropped off a car at the mechanic and was going to take the GO train back And I had no idea what the train schedule was. So I'm walking. It's like a 20-minute-ish walk from the mechanic to the GO train.
Yeah.
And the trains run every half hour. So worst case, I'll wait half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm approaching the train station, I can hear the faint bell of the train in the background.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that train's going my way or the other way, but I pick up the pace a bit and the train pulls into the track and I shoot down the stairs, under the track, tap the card, up the other stairs.
Right.
And it was my train.
There you go.
And the doors open. I just hop on the train just before the doors closed. And it was like, yes. One of those moments where perfect timing.
Yeah. Like in a spy movie.
Yeah. Or it's like when you're pumping gas into the car and you let go of the thing and it's right on the dollar mark.
Yeah.
Like no change. Not that that matters with credit cards anymore, but there's something satisfying about it.
Round numbers are nice.
Yeah. So it was one of those moments where I'm like spot on, exactly. Didn't have to wait at all.
Yeah.
But had I been 30 seconds later, I would be sitting there for half an hour. So that was my adventure du jour.
There you go. Yeah.
Right?
That's a question I really like asking. What's the last adventure you went on? Because that opens up some things too. And again, you get to see what people are passionate about, right? Oh, well, I don't know. I don't do anything adventurous. Oh, yeah, you do. I'm sure you do. So
what's the last thing that you got excited about?
Yeah. That's really what I'm asking. What's the last thing you got excited about?
Yeah. Or scared by? Or what was the last thing you learned about yourself? When was the last time you surprised yourself? Right? There's all kinds of questions that invite self-reflection.
Yeah.
And we're presuming in all of this that you're looking to connect with people. Obviously, questions can be used for all kinds of purposes. If you are a lawyer and you're cross-examining a witness, you're going to be doing it very differently. You're asking closed questions that have yes or no answers, and you're inching them into a corner so that you can go, aha.
You're trying to paint a specific narrative.
Because it's tactical and it's adversarial and it's strategic.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone knows that, but that's a whole different game you play with questions. So that's one of the things, my brother's a lawyer and he was telling me, like, they taught him in law school and tried to drill this into them, like, do not cross-examine your wife and kids or, whoever, your partner, your friends.
Yeah.
Don't, because you're going to be so practiced at it and it's fun.
Right.
But don't do this to people in your life because they're going to hate it so much. So try not to cross-examine people unless you are actually a lawyer, and in which case, have at it.
Yeah, but in the specific context of doing it while being a lawyer.
Yes, while lawyering. Yes, especially, exactly. But don't go home and do it. It probably won't. It won't get you what you want.
Just check in with yourself. What is it you want to know about this person? Why are you asking? Is it curiosity? If you want honesty from a person, be open. Ask open-ended questions and just see where things go. Good questions are going to give you facts about things, yes and no answers. Great questions are going to open up space so that you can discover who people really are.
Yeah. And you can ask meta questions about questions. Like, is there anything I haven't asked you that you wish I had?
Right. Yeah.
Or what's a question I could ask you that would really make a difference right now? What's a question I could ask you that would really matter? And then you've partnered with the other person in coming up with useful questions.
Right.
Going meta can be kind of fun.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, I was at a bar or something and had tried to strike up a conversation with a young lady that I found attractive. And she was giving me such a hard time. She's like, your shirt's too tight. She was like busting my balls on purpose to get a rise out of me.
Right.
It totally worked.
Yeah.
And so it started to get awkward. And I think at one point I was like, this is really not going very well, is it?
And that can just sort of like
that can kind of turn it around. I'm like, you're busting my balls and it's definitely working. This feels like it's not going very well. What's your take on the situation?
That's great.
Yeah.
I had a good one the other day. It was a friend's birthday party and one of the fellows who was there, I know him on an acquaintance level, and he just said like, hey, Pat, if you could only eat one food, like, Desert Island Discs, you can only listen to 3 records for the rest of your life because you're trapped on a desert island. If you could only eat one food, what would be the one food that you would choose? And so it was an interesting way to just kind of like inject some levity into the day, but also like, I don't know, what would be the one thing that I would eat? Anyway, we settled on pizza because pizza's got a lot of different varieties. There's a lot of subcategories to pizza. And
so smuggling in, this is your version of the asking the genie for more wishes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of cheating. Incidentally, you just dated both of us by saying the Desert Island record list where you only get 3 albums. People don't even know what albums are anymore.
Fair.
What do you mean? I get YouTube Music.
Yeah.
Spotify.
Well, you don't have the internet on the desert island.
Oh, well, then you just download 50,000 songs to your iPod.
Fair enough. Okay.
Solar charger or something.
Yep. I guess I'm an old man now.
Yeah. So the power of questions, what's the bottom line? A lot of it is just bring curiosity and, lean into the conversation, follow the emotion.
Yeah.
If somebody gets excited about something, you can tap into that, follow the energy. Oh, yeah. So you got excited about that. Say more.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the trick. If you want to be a great conversationalist, get curious and ask better questions.
Yeah.
And listen to the answer.
Yeah.
And actually care what they say.
And follow the thread.
And ask good follow-up questions, because that really shows that you're listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't, this doesn't have to be forced. If someone is boring the hell out of you, you can ask a question that takes the conversation in a more interesting direction.
Why are you so boring?
I think we can end with that. Yeah. If you like this, you want more content, subscribe, do all the things. As always, we hope this was useful. Thanks for tuning in.